You're listening to Brilliant Breakthroughs Podcast, episode number 3 with David Wallace. Welcome, small business owners. My name is Jake Naraki, and I'm the host of the Brilliant Breakthroughs podcast for the small business owner. Now, if this is your first time listening to the show, thank you for joining us, and hopefully this provides some value for you, and of course, tools, tactics, and ideas for you to implement into your small business today. Now, the great thing about this podcast is it goes hand in hand with a book that is going to be released November 8th of 2017. That book is called Brilliant Breakthroughs for the Small Business Owner. Fresh perspectives on profitability, people, productivity, and finding peace in your business. Now, today's show in particular is about David Wallace, and David Wallace is an individual that is going to teach you how to increase your sales, how to do a better job of creating profitability in your own personal business. The great thing about this podcast is that it reflects the kind of outline of the book. And as you heard in that tagline, profitability, people, productivity, and peace are the 4 pillars that we are going to be placing our ideas into and, of course, outlining in this particular show. So David is going to be a part of our profitability chapter or part within this podcasting series. So I know you're going to find some great value there. And the other thing is that to win in 2017, to make sure that your business succeeds, you need to make sure that you arm yourself with the best ideas, tools, resources. And if you want to get yourself 100 free small business tips to reach business success in 2017, head on over to our Bitly link. Now, the Bitly link, you got to make sure you use all capital B's, okay? So go to bit.ly. So that's the bit.ly/ all capital B's from here on out. Brilliant Biz, B-I-Z, book. Brilliant Biz Book. Again, it's bit.ly/ Brilliant Biz Book, all capital B's, to get yourself 100 small business tips to reach business success in 2017. Now, fortunately for you, you're probably thinking, okay, I love podcasts. I'm listening to this. I can't wait for the interview to increase my profitability in my own personal business. But I want more. What? I want more. Great information, Jake. How do I go about this? Well, the cool part is not only do we have a podcast and, of course, the book is coming out, but we have a free app that you can download directly to your phone to get notifications, to dive deeper into the interviews, and, of course, to get in contact with the brilliant practicing experts that are provided not only in the book, but, of course, in this podcast series. All you have to do is go to your app store and type in with capital B's, Brilliant Biz Book. Brilliant Biz, B-I-Z, book. And we should pop on up. We have Android and, of course, the iTunes app stores included in that outreach. So with that being said, I don't want to take any more of your time because I know your time is money. And with that being said, let's dive into the interview with David Wallace. Hey guys, today we have an awesome guest, a co-author of the book, Dave Wallace. His title for his chapter, Sales Stuck in Solitude. And honestly, his link between sales and cycling in his own personal life is an awesome pairing. And of course, we're going to get into all the nuts and bolts on how we can all do a better job in sales. But most importantly, we're going to understand who Dave is, what he's about, and why cycling is the best way to link sales and our future income and our future ability to make an impact in the world. Dave, my man, thanks for coming on the show, and thanks for being a part of the book.
Hey, Jake, it was great to meet you a little over a month ago and get to know you a little bit. And certainly I'm thrilled to be on your podcast and to be part of this book. It's going to be an awesome adventure. Has been an awesome adventure.
It has, and when you embark on something like this, it's interesting. It's an interesting dynamic when you bring in different personalities, different people that are experts in their own category. And today for you, obviously, we're talking about sales and kind of talking about your own personal journey. But the first thing that I wanted to kind of hit upon is your passion for riding. You pair, riding your bike, cycling to sales. And I guess the first question is, what do you love more, sales or riding your bike?
That sounds to me that's a loaded question.
Right.
I think let's put it this way. If I retire from selling, I will still ride my bike.
Okay, there you go.
but I could end up, I could end up. I don't know if I could end up not riding my bike. We'll put it that way. I could stop selling at some point in my life. Although I think all of us are selling at some level. I
Right.
think it's an interesting term, but yeah, it's been an interesting adventure. I got into riding many years ago. My dad became a cyclist. He had a heart attack at age 45. We bought him a bike while he was still in the hospital, and when he got out, he started tooling around the neighborhood, and the next thing we knew, he was riding 100 miles at a time with his buddies. And I guess the fear that you're going to become your parents sometimes comes true. My dad was an English professor and a cyclist and a golfer. I was a golfer, I'm a cyclist, and now I was an English major, and now I'm going to be a co-author in a book. So holy cow, I've become my dad, except for I'm not nearly as intellectual as he was by any stretch.
Sure, sure. Well, I would imagine he's proud of your journey and proud of where you came from, and obviously that bike has impacted his life and obviously impacted yours. You started off the story with talking about your 100-mile journey and adventure. Take us through that. Obviously, it was something you planned for, something you were looking forward to, but was it grueling and as horrible as you were expecting, or was it worse?
Actually, it was not as bad as I was expecting. I've done a number of long rides. I've done several what they call double centuries, which is 200 miles in a single day. And the Trek 100 for me is an important ride because it's raising money for the MAC Fund and for Children's Hospital. So it's an opportunity for me to do something I love and at the same time raise some money for what I think is a really good cause. And I've done the ride before. This particular ride that I reference in the chapter, the adventure it was one of the hottest early June days in Southeast Wisconsin history. And so that caused us to kind of say, okay, are we ready to, how are we going to handle this ride given the fact it's 95 degrees and we're at the first week in June, and normally we have time to ease into that kind of weather. So there was a little bit of not apprehension, but just, okay, we got to make sure we're smart about what we're going to do. And I won't, no spoiler alert, but you can read the chapter and find out how well I did as it relates to that.
Yeah, we'll come back to that later on. We'll leave the audience in suspense here. I guess the question I have is, just as a casual cyclist myself, obviously you're wearing the full gear, right? I mean, you're for low drag, everything is prepared. What do you use for food? Or do you guys stop on these big journeys? Do you guys just pack on as much, water and fluids as you can throughout the 100 miles or in your case, 200 miles? Just logistically, how does that work, out of curiosity?
You bring food with you.
Okay.
Obviously, there's only so much you could put in your jersey pockets, and you also need to be bringing supplies like a pump and a CO2 cartridge and stuff like that in case you get a flat tire, and you obviously want to have your phone. So you bring energy bars, and you bring there's these different high energy kind of gummy bear things you can bring that have not only a bunch of electrolytes and things like that, but they have caffeine in them so that they give you a boost. But organized rides like this have rest stops along the way, and they're manned by volunteers. And so you don't have to go crazy with what you bring with you. It's not like if you were doing a self-supported ride of a long distance where you were kind of all on your own. So in that case, you don't have to be overly loaded down with food.
Sure. Cool. So let's give a background to the audience here. Who you are, what you're about, how would you say you qualify yourself as the salesman? And give us a background on who Dave is.
Sure. Well, I'm first of all, I guess most importantly, I'm a husband and a father, and now I'm a grandfather, so that's
Congrats.
pretty cool. Thanks. I've been doing this sales or sales related stuff for 40 years. So I guess just in terms of sheer longevity, that gives me some credibility. Started off my career in New York City, then came to Chicago, then came to Milwaukee in various different roles. I had roles with Sony Corporation. I had a short stint with American TV. That's a part of my career I just soon black out. But I've been both in retail sales and in business-to-business sales, and so I not only was I in the being an individual contributor, but I also have led teams in my past, and I've also done things like sales enablement, where you're looking at tools that are going to help the sales organization. So a lot of different things in my career, all wrapped around this idea of whatever sales. And for a long time, people didn't want to use the term sales. It had a bad connotation, so they would come up with things like account executive or business development. But the fact of the matter is, it's sales, and sales gets a bad rap. But I think that it's if you go about it with the right intention, which is the idea that you want to help the person that you're working with instead of you want to sell something, I think you have a much better chance of being successful.
Yeah, no, for sure. And obviously, you put in the long hours and the years to kind of perfect this in a way. Do you mind taking us through, when you first began, obviously you were not very good, just like anybody, riding a bike or learning a new craft. You're stumbling, you do the mix-ups. I guess along that journey, who has helped you, kind of open your eyes to bigger and better ways to just interact with people and to bring value to them?
That's an interesting question. I haven't really thought about it a lot, and I guess I would say there's a lot of different people, and a lot of it is just I don't know if the school of hard knocks is an overused term, but what happens is that you go into a presentation, or you go into early in your career, and you want to impress the person on the other side of the table, so you kind of tell them about all of your background, how smart you are, all the stuff that you've done, and little by little you find out that they really don't care. They really care about what's in it for me.
True.
It's not about how smart I am. It's about how can I help you achieve your goal. And I remember one customer of mine was an interesting comment, and we were trying to play up the value of the people that were going to be working on the project and as a sales thing. And he kind of stopped us. He said, look, he goes, I assume that your people know what they're doing. He goes, otherwise I wouldn't be having this conversation. So you don't need to tell me how smart you are. What you need to tell me is how you're going to solve my problem. How are you going to make this pain that I have go away? And I'm like, whoa,
cool.
that makes a lot of sense. And then I think along the way, I've had various people that I've come across who have just added bits and pieces to the puzzle in terms of helping me to understand that it's not about how smart I am. People just don't care. And sometimes I'll give you a great story. It's a biking story too. I was looking for a bike years ago, and I went into a bike store, and the guy started, and this is back in the 80s, and the guy started talking about the bike, and he said, it's got double chrome moly, blah, 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 all this techno babble about the bike. And I just felt like an idiot. So I said, thanks. And I walked out. I came back again. About the fourth time, there was a young kid in there, probably 21 years old in college. And I said, I think what I want to do is just keep the bike I have. I'll get, like a new pair of shorts and something else. And if at the end of the summer I've ridden my bike a lot, then I'll reward myself with a new bike. And this kid goes, well, yeah, that's a great idea. You could do that. He goes, or we could find you a bike that's fit exactly for you, that's lightweight, very comfortable, and you're going to enjoy riding, and you're going to have a blast riding your bike, and you're going to ride a lot. I walked out with a bike because he didn't tell me about the bike. He told me about my experience with the bike, and that made all the difference in the world to me as a customer. It wasn't about him and how cool the bike was. It was about how I would feel when I rode this new bike. And so I bought a bike.
Yeah. No, that's, and I think a lot of us are listening in, have been in a situation like that. We come in with an expectation, for me, like buying a mattress, like my wife and I went into Verlo, which is a local chain here in the Midwest. And we're like, no, we're not buying a mattress. We're not buying a mattress. And this guy did an awesome job of not selling us to buy a mattress. He was just telling us how the coils are going to be able to allow us to rest better and blah, blah, blah. And we're like, geez. He did a great job. Again, kind of, forecasting and giving us that vision of what can come out of either, receiving this object. And for you, what was the object that you were, offering or selling, or even what you're doing today when it comes to sales?
Well, it's interesting because when you really break it down, and I don't talk about this in the chapter, but perhaps in subsequent versions of the book, we'll talk about it, because what you're really doing, if you think about it, is you're trying to help somebody understand that changing something is better than the status quo.
True.
And if you think about, so let's take your example with the mattress. What that guy did was he basically helped you understand that, yeah, you could go back home and sleep on the mattress that you have. That's the status quo. But if you change, if you get a new mattress, then all of these wonderful things are going to happen, like a good night's sleep. You're not going to wake up with your back sore and all that kind of stuff. So it's really about, you're not selling change, but what you're really doing is you're helping people understand that the status quo is actually higher risk than change.
Yeah, and it's an interesting dynamic when you're able to pull that out, and I think that's where the difference is in between a salesman where you feel pressure for the sale to occur, as opposed to taking these customers through a journey. And we're kind of skipping ahead here, but you talk about in your chapter about providing that value, and when you do finally make that sale, or you convert that person into opting into whatever you're trying to move them towards, to always make sure that you get feedback to make sure that what you did, that transaction, does apply to them. Do you mind going deeper into that?
Sure. I think that's a really important point. And in the chapter we talk about, when you ask people, kind of what's the value that their product delivers, a lot of time they start describing what it is that they do. So as an example, previously in my career, I dealt with a major pharmaceutical company on the East Coast, and they contracted, through efforts of myself and my team, a major project to us. And we thought that they hired us because we had really smart people, and we were really good at what we did, and all the kind of stuff that's in your brochure about how you do this and you do that. And we asked them at some point, why did they do business with us? And they basically said, because you allowed us to reduce our cost in this particular area by 33%. And for them, that amounted to $50 million. So that was the value that our company delivered. And we didn't know, we weren't thinking about it big enough. We were just thinking, oh yeah, we helped them define these processes, and we helped install this software, and we were better at it than anybody else. And that's why they did business with us. But that's not why they did business with us. They did business with us because they looked farther down the road and said, these guys can help save us $50 million. That's a pretty big number.
It is. Obviously, this book and this chapter is all designed to help small business owners, market themselves better, have better reach, create better sales, all that different types of stuff. In the process of being a small business owner, obviously everybody goes through their peaks and their valleys. And in the beginning, some people just know that, they're really good at one craft, but there's also a lot of people, when it comes to the world of sales, that they're not fearful, because it's obviously a part of the exchange. It's a part of business. But there's a lot of people that have, they're a little apprehensive, or they're not confident. They feel like what they're selling maybe doesn't have the full punch of value that they're kind of offering. Do you have any suggestions for people that are small business owners right now? They're listening in and going, this is all great, and the information can help me, but how do I just get through these awkward transactions and this fear of overwhelm and the fear of not feeling like my product's good enough? Do you have any suggestions or ideas to help those guys out?
I think there's a few things that you can do. I think number one, you have to take yourself out of your own skin, and you have to dispassionately look at what it is that you're providing from the point of view of your customer, and saying, and be really brutally honest with yourself and saying, is this something that I would pay money for? They used to have the expression about pro football players would say, I would pay money to watch Barry Sanders play, for example.
Sure.
I think it's the same idea. So when I look at what I do and the services I provide, I have to kind of take myself out of my my own view of how cool I think what I do is. And I have to say, what's the value that I would get if I was on the other side? And if I can see value, then I know I've got something that I can present. So I would say that's one thing, is you have to really be brutally honest with yourself about what it is that you do. Number one. Number two, you have to be able to quantify the value that you deliver, because there's lots of people that are going to tell you that they've got best practices, or they're best in breed, or they're best in this, but it's the value that you deliver that is going to that's going to allow you to feel comfortable in having a conversation with someone. So if you can honestly say to someone, customers that work with me save X amount of money per transaction, for example, or there's a great quote. A company here in Wisconsin, they'll remain anonymous, they thought that people bought from them because they made really cool, hard to engineer parts, and they used exacting manufacturing standards, Lean Six Sigma, and things like that. Well, they asked their customers, they said, well, why do you buy from these guys? And the customer said, because they never stopped the production line. And they're like, well, what does that mean? It says, well, our average vendor stops the production line over 2 times a year. Average cost of a production line stoppage is $250,000. So over 3 years, that's about a $1.7 million savings. Oh. So that's number one. Understand, really figure out what it is, what's the value that you create. And if you have customers, then you have to interview them, and you have to ask them in their terms, what's the value that they got from you. And on the flip side, a lot of people are really good at developing a product, or they're really good at coaching or managing or whatever it is, but they don't feel comfortable with the selling part. Oh, I'm not a salesperson. I hate salespeople.
Yeah, totally.
Well, I would say in that area, what you have to have sounds kind of trite. You have to have a process. Sales is not about winging it. I mean, you don't go to a doctor and the guy says, well, yeah, I think you got a torn ACL. I'm gonna cut you open. We'll kind of see what comes up there. Right. I mean, they're going to take X-rays. There's a procedure that they go through. An airline pilot goes through a checklist before he takes off. He doesn't just say, well, hey, Bill, are we good to go? Let's rocket this thing down the runway and take off. Same thing with sales. It's a process. I mean, and there's enough history. Sales is perhaps the second oldest profession out there. There's a process that you can follow and there are many processes out there. You don't have to subscribe to just one, but there are, it's an evolving way of working with customers. It's more about the interaction. But if you adopt a process that says, I need to do these things, I need to make sure that I'm always got the customer in mind, and work from a process instead of just trying to wing it, you can be a lot more successful. Because one of the things you're going to learn is if you keep the customer and the customer intentions at the forefront, you've got a lot more chance for success than if you're always trying to sell what it is that you do. I've got a new widget, and you got to buy my widget because it's really cool, it's red, and it's this and it's that. And the customer's like, I don't care. Right.
So the follow-up question to that is, okay, so the process and is myself, I'm delivering different products and services and stuff like that. I really don't have a process. I really don't. And obviously when you use those examples of, a checklist or, going through your methodical kind of reasoning to make sure that everything will go smoothly, I don't have that in place. So for me and for the people that are kind of scratching their heads going, yeah, maybe I should kind of formulate something or put something together. Where do we begin? Do you have any helpful tips for us to formulate a plan to make sure we hit before we dive into this pool of sales?
Yeah, I think I could. There's a number of different processes out there. I mean, sales processes or sales ideas, but I think you can kind of boil them down to probably a handful of things that you need to go through if you think about it. First of all, as someone who's providing a service, I need to do some research. I need to figure out what it is about the person I'm going to talk to. Now, I'm referring specifically to business sales. Business to consumer sales is a whole different animal. But let's say I sell IT consulting services as an example. So if I want to sell IT consulting services to Jake Enterprises, I need to do some research about Jake Enterprises. I need to understand what it is that you do, what's important to your organization, and there's ways to find that information out. Obviously, we can go online and we can do boatloads of research. Even if you're a privately held company, I can get information off your LinkedIn page. I can get information off your website. So I got to do some research. I can't just call you up and say, "Hey, Jake, this is Dave. I got me some cool services. You want to buy some?" That's
Right.
That's not going to work. So I have to do some research, and then once I've done some research and I understand what it is that's important to you, then I have to craft some sort of a message that I'm going to deliver to you that has some sort of we talk about it a little bit in the chapter, but I want to predict some sort of a value that I'm going to get and give you, and that's going to be based on business that I've done with other people, and that's where those conversations with your customer come in. Now, if you're brand new and you haven't done any business, then you're going to have to it's going to be a prediction that's going to be based on kind of your best guess. But what you can't do is just start calling people up, dialing for dollars. Just start calling people up and say, "Hey, tell me something about your company so I can tell you if we've got something for you." It just doesn't work that way anymore. So you got to do research. You have to have a compelling message that helps them to see that maybe the status quo is not the only option. And we know from our physics class that an object in motion tends to stays in motion unless acted upon by an outside force.
Right.
So the customer is going to keep doing exactly what they're doing unless they're acted upon by an outside force. You're that outside force, but the acting you're doing is showing them the possibilities that change could give them, as opposed to trying to beat them over the head and get them to do something. The car salesman that stands in the door and won't let you leave until you're going to buy a car. I mean,
right.
that. So it's and then once you very high level, you got to do some research. You got to figure out what it is the value you can deliver. You have to have a message for them, whether it's a phone call or an email or some sort of creative marketing that's going to get their attention. And then when you go in and you actually talk to them, you've got to make sure that all along the way you're helping them understand the value of them participating with you in this particular transaction. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I think the biggest, kind of aha for me is, and I think it doesn't really matter what industry you're doing, or if business to business or business consumer, or one-on-one coaching, whatever, even just selling a book, I mean, is based off of just understanding who your ideal client is and kind of researching them and figuring out, their pain points and the things that they're struggling with or whatnot. And then you can kind of dial in and obviously, figure out what they need. I think that's the biggest one that maybe a lot of us miss in a small, when we're creating our businesses or we're trying to sell something, and especially the quote unquote entrepreneur world where people are kind of just jumping into this pool and they really don't know what they're doing. So if you're a new entrepreneur or new small business, make sure you're very clear on who your ideal customer is and making sure that what you're selling can hit those pain points or those ideas that, this is what they need to solve X, Y, and Z problem. The other question I have for you based off of that is value. We state value all the time. There's value up the wazoo in this book, of course. And I think it's a very overused term because, deliver the value. What do you say to somebody that has a product or they're selling, it doesn't matter to who, they have value integrated in, but they can't figure out how to add more value. Like, where does value come from? Is it just more of maybe a personal service? Is it more like more paper stacked on top of the original documents? Like, where do you feel value can come from if you feel like you're lacking in certain areas?
It's an interesting observation. I guess my comment would be, value is in the eye of the beholder.
True.
The value has nothing to do with me. I mean, I don't, I can't define what value is. And that's where people get in trouble. People get in trouble because they try to define what the value that their solution delivers is, or their product, what the value is. And the example of the bike that I gave earlier, the first people were trying to tell me that the value was that it was really cool materials that that were used to make this bike. But the value for me was, this guy said, you're going to enjoy biking more.
Right. Okay.
So if you're if you're a small business owner and you've been in business for a while and you're saying, I'm having a hard time honing in, I got too many misses and not enough hits. I would say a couple things. I would say, number one, you have to talk to your customers, and you have to do it in a way that you're not defending what it is that you did. So, there's a very prescriptive way you can go about having this conversation, where you elicit from them, what's the value that you got from doing business with my organization? And sometimes you find that it's very surprising. It's not that your product is really cool and that it's red or something else.
Sure.
It's that by doing business with you, it allowed us to do this, and that meant this. And it could be a lot of different things. It could be we were able to eliminate risk because we were able to mitigate this particular manufacturing challenge that we had, or we were able to increase sales because we could, by automating these 7 steps, we could free our people up to talk to more customers. And the customer is going to tell you what the value is that you deliver. When you get in trouble is when you try to decide what the value is that you deliver. And there's another thing. Everybody wants to have some value statement that's just chock full of it's a
Totally.
it's a buzzword bingo winner.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't need that. I mean, sometimes it's a lot simpler. That if you want to really do it, go read Simon Sinek's book, Start with Why.
Sure. Yeah.
And I quote the book in the chapter, but I mean, that really forces you to think through why it is. And he has a great example about Apple Computer in there, and why Apple got the dominant role that they did, because they do the exact same thing as Dell and HP and a bunch of other people. But why they're in business is that's their grounding factor, and that's what drives everything that they do, and that's why people love their products. People bitch about them, but the results suggest that we bitch a lot, but we still buy an awful lot of Apple product because of the why.
Right. Yeah, no, you nailed it, especially when you put in that type of context. The value is really in the eye of the beholder, and sometimes we throw so much at it that we can't deliver on that promise, and to be honest, maybe we don't even need that much value. The value is already built in, and it's just more of a connection piece that maybe is missing. No, well stated. I guess the follow-up question is, when you create, so you want to get good at sales, you got to create this kind of checklist, this outline for your journey. In the book, and in your chapter, I should say, and when it comes to cycling, even though you're on your own bike, aka in your own business, but it doesn't seem like it's just a individual sport or an individual activity. You state in the chapter that, like cycling, it's a team sport, even though you're one rider with your own material between your legs there moving forward. Do you mind dwelling and give us a little deeper look into how Cycling World works and how we can build that out within our sales team?
Sure. We'll talk about cycling first. If you're on a bike ride by yourself, clearly you're doing your own thing, and you have to make the bike go. But, there were people involved getting the bike ready. I mean, there was the guy who tuned it up, and and now, of course, there's going to be a small percentage of people who build their bikes from the ground up and they do everything, but that's a huge minority. But, there are people who have helped you to tune your bike up to make sure that it's working the way it's supposed to work. Same thing with a race car. I mean, race car drivers don't win the race by themselves. They've got a whole pit crew. Well, cycling has their version of that. But when you're on a bike ride, it's amazing. If you're in a group of people, and let's say you're with 10 people and you're in a single line, they call that a pace line, and you're about 5th in line, your savings in energy can be anywhere from 17 to 60%.
Wow.
So I've been in groups of people where, when I'm on the front of the line, let's say we're going 22 miles an hour. When I'm on the front of the line, my heart rate's up in the 140s, and I'm working pretty hard, and I'm breaking the wind for everybody else. No pun intended, but I'm the guy. I'm the point of the spear,
right?
And I'm working the hardest. When my turn is over and I drop back into the back, I can see my heart. I can see the pace stay the same, or maybe the next guy's even stronger than me, and we go up to 23 or 24 miles an hour. But I can see my heart rate go from the 140s down to the 110 to 115.
Wow, yeah.
And I'm actually tapping the brakes as I go. So clearly, I'm in a situation where I'm getting a lot of help from the people around me. They're providing me with a lot of support. If you think about sales, yes, if you're a solopreneur and you're doing your own thing, you kind of got to come up with your marketing materials. But most of the people that are in that position, they have people that they work with. They don't try to do it all themselves. So you've got people that are going to help you. You've got people that are marketing experts where maybe you're not. You've got people that are coaches that can look at your business and ask you questions from a financial perspective. If you're in a company where you're not a solopreneur, but you're surrounded by people, you've got subject matter experts. In my career, I've worked in a number of really, really smart companies where there were subject matter experts in every area. So I didn't have to know everything about everything. What I had to know was I had to understand my customer. I had to understand what their challenges were, and then figure out who's the right person in my organization to help them understand how we can help them solve that particular challenge. And depending on the challenge that they're facing, it could be one of a number of different people. So it's really about leveraging the team. And obviously, that goes a long way toward easing the burden on any individual person. Now, if you're a very small business and you don't have a lot of people, a lot of those people that are going to be part of your team, it's going to be a virtual team, and it's going to be made up of people who aren't necessarily in your organization, but they provide ad hoc services or ad hoc consulting as needed. I have a friend of mine who runs a business, and he's in what he calls a best practices group, and they get together once a month at a coffee shop, and it's a bunch of CEOs who are all in a similar position, and they talk through challenges that they're having with their business, and they leverage each other's expertise for guidance. So the guy's just not going to work every morning and trying to figure out how he can do this all by himself. So in that respect, both, again, my point was that on the outside, it looks like if you're riding a bike, you're doing it all. You're doing everything yourself, and you've got no help. Yeah, you have to do a lot of the work yourself, but you certainly have help. And the same in sales. Just because I go on a visit to a potential client by myself, it doesn't mean that in the background I don't have a whole bunch of people that have helped me to craft the message that I want to deliver, or after I've heard from the customer and their challenges, that I'm going to go back to them and say, okay, this is what the challenge this customer is facing. Let's talk about how we think we can help them, and what's that going to look like, and then we come up with a plan, and maybe I'm the person who presents that idea to the customer. But again, I haven't done it in solitary confinement. I've done it with the help of a lot of really smart people.
Right. And to kind of piggyback off of that, to kind of, I guess, keep on preaching about building out a team or getting people on your side. I recently threw an event, a 2-day event, and I did everything. I mean, I was the marketer, I was the sales, I was the technical support, I was the ticket guy, all that stuff. And I was thinking to myself after this weekend, I was like, I cannot grow and become bigger and better if I don't start to utilize either A, help around me, or B, start, outsourcing it. And like you said, the easiest and the low hanging fruit is to jump on, a VA service of some kind, virtual assistant service, to start to put those people in place. Because if you are truly passionate about making sure your business is going to excel, not only just this year, but in the years to come, you got to have that system and those people in place to leverage you to do what you do best. And maybe you're the best talker, but you're horrible with, the technical support or getting the documents to that person or whatever the case may be. And you got to kind of figure that out, because we all want to grow. The only way to grow is to get a team around you. The one thing that you say, there's 3 things that you kind of hit upon in the chapter. when you kind of start your group rides, you say you basically all of you guys share the workload, you help one another out. And I think that maybe the most important is that you keep one another in the game. And during this progression of a small business owner, sometimes, we're in our own office by ourselves, downstairs, either in the basement or at an office building, kind of tucked away. And it's hard to have that support in in your own business when you're kind of the one trick pony. So, who's your team, as in who supports you and who gets you mentally in the game when you're not checking in fully? And then second of all, do you have any suggestions for people to find that, to get people that can motivate them and to keep on sharing their visions to keep on driving us forward?
Yeah, I think that for me, I have a number of people that I've worked with over the years. Some of them have become personal friends. Some of them are pretty exclusively business friends. So we stay in touch with each other. I mean, it's a concerted effort to call up. I mean, there was a book written many years ago called "Never Have Lunch Alone," or "Never Go to Lunch." Anyway, but the
never
idea
eat alone or something. Yeah,
the idea was that you always want to be networking, and sometimes it's just like I got a buddy of mine who is a cycling buddy. He runs his own business. I run my own. Our paths never cross in business. But we talk about business. We talk about, general sorts of terms, and, we're having lunch on Friday. So I have people that I partner with that provide adjacent services to what it is that I do, that I can reach out to and talk to. So there's a lot of different ways. There are networking groups, depending on what business that you're in. There are some very sophisticated groups out there. I think Vistage, it used to be called Tech, comes to mind. That's a higher end group of business leaders who get together on a monthly basis. And there's somebody who's got a lot of experience who will chair a tech group. I guess, like I say, I think it's now been bought by somebody called Vistage. But there are a number of different ways you can stay in touch with people if you're if you're in a very small business where you don't have a lot of people around you. But you could be a small business owner where you've got a lot of employees. I mean, you could still be in a business of $20 to $50 million, which is considered small business, and you might have anywhere from 80 to 200 people who work in the organization. And I think what's key is that you can't assume because you're the owner or you're the CEO that you're always the smartest guy in the room.
Right.
And you got to have ways to make sure that your team is contributing to the organization, is to help you think about things, and you can't surround yourself with yes people. You got to surround yourself with people that are going to challenge you. Much easier said than done. But I've worked in small businesses where it was very much a command and control organization. I've worked in others where it was very distributed, and they have a very different vibe. I think the command and control has its limitations. I mean, it's very difficult to scale if you're always only one person's making all the decisions.
Sure. Kind of going off of that a little bit, what was your daily fuel? On those days when you walked into the different businesses that you kind of bounce around in your career, what was the thing that kept you driving and just, to kind of get you out of that mental fog and to get you laser focused and to bring your best self? I know we're kind of diving into the personal development side here instead of the sale technique, but, they talk about presence, right? And, to have that commanding presence and to, show, different types of energy that can come off of you. But obviously through life and through work, sometimes we don't have that. Is there anything through your career that you always either listened to or did that would fill you up with energy so you could bring your best self to your job and even in just showing up in life?
I think that for me, early in my career was, and it probably still is, for a lot of us, it's fear of failure.
Totally.
And there's some research out there that shows that if you present someone with the possibilities of what could be, that they'll have a certain level of motivation. But if you present them with the possibilities of what, the negative possibilities, that actually it motivates people even more. There's a fairly significant body of research that suggests that, for example, the cost of indecision can motivate people to make a change if they see that more than the potential upside of something. So fear of failure, I think, is kind of part of the human character. I don't know a lot of people that don't have it. I mean, you talk about, Michael Jordan said he hated to lose more than he loved to win. For me, it was getting up every morning and working out. It was that if I was in a bad place or whatever, if I got up in the morning and I went for a bike ride or got on my trainer or I went for a swim or whatever my workout was, that always helped me to kind of approach the day with a fresh feel. I mean, a cyclist have a saying that's, nobody ever finishes a bike ride and says, "Crap, I wish I never would have done that." I mean, and it's probably true for people who go for a run. I mean, it might be a cold, rainy day, but at the end of it, you're like, man, I'm really glad I did that. It really got me going. So I think for me, that was part of it. The fear of failure was certainly part of it, and just kind of pride in what you're doing and what you want to contribute to your business, whether you're an employee or the owner. Can be a motivating factor. And I realize that's pretty high level, and I don't have any words of wisdom that come from the great motivational speakers of our day. And my guess is you're well on your way to being one of those.
Thanks.
But I don't know that I have any nuggets of wisdom that are going to really help people out, other than, for me, it was all about getting a workout in that it cleared my mind, and it let me say, hey, I've got my health. I can go out. I'm 62 years old, and I can go out and ride my bike for an hour and a half at 20 miles an hour. There's very few people in the world that can do that. I'm pretty blessed.
Yeah.
And that helps me to go on to the next phase of my day.
Sure. No, thanks for that. I mean, obviously from, popular books on habits or routines, exercise somewhere, somehow always slides in there. And obviously you've reaped the benefits of it. And just a couple more questions here, I guess, in summary. What are you hoping that the reader gets out of this chapter? Obviously sales is daunting and scary, and the fear of failure. And we talked about all the irritations that come along with it. But, what is it that you really want the reader to pull away and take away from your chapter?
I think that salespeople are made, not born, and that all of us are selling all the time, even though we don't really think about it. I mean, think about your morning before you got on the phone with me.
Right.
Can you sell rationally to a 4-year-old? Perhaps not. But if you think about it, think about the successes you've had in the last month or so, and how did those differ when you tried to convince your child to do something versus when you weren't able to convince them. And again, with a 4-year-old, it's a little bit more difficult because the rational part of their brain is not fully functioning yet. But you get the idea.
Right.
So it's this idea that you can be successful as a small business owner if you don't have a background in sales, because you're selling anyway. You just haven't really realized it. And the other thing is you have to treat sales as a discipline. It's not just something. It's part of the business, but it's a discipline. It requires discipline. It requires a process. And when you do that, your chances of success go way up. Yeah, can you be successful just winging it? Probably for a while, but ultimately you're going to have a process that you can rely on, because at some point, if you want to grow your business, you've got to take that great knowledge that you have, and you have to trust other people that they can go out and tell the story like you do, and having a process allows you to onboard people and bring people up to speed so that they can go out and tell the great story of your organization just as well as you do, and help your organization grow.
Yeah, no, for sure. Dave, dude, it's been a pleasure to talk to you about sales, and obviously you've gone through your different chapters of your own personal life. Any closing words of wisdom to the small business owner that wants great things to come out of their business, and they know that sales is a much needed. It's the lifeblood of the business. Without it literally these businesses will fall apart and go into the wasteland. Anything that you just want to share with them before we wrap up?
I think that probably too much for a wrap up, but I would say I would say that I would say that the most important thing you have to do from a sales perspective is you have to have business cases that allow you to show your customer the value that they're going to get from doing business with you. If you don't have that, you really haven't earned the right to ask them for their business. And that's a quote in the quote in the chapter is, if you can't articulate a business case to a buyer, you haven't earned the right to ask for the business. So business owners, you've got to figure out what are your business cases and what's the value to deliver. And then once you've got that, you're a long ways down the road toward getting more business.
Cool. And where can people find out about you and what you're doing and bounce questions and connect with you?
They can email me at dave@bayridgeconsultinggroup.com. I'm on LinkedIn. I can't remember now if it's David Wallace or Dave Wallace, but certainly you can find me there. So either one of those places. And if you want to look at my website, it's bayridgeconsultinggroup.com is the website.
Cool. Dave, my man, I appreciate you. I thank you for coming on the show here, and I know your information is going to make an impact. So last question I have for you is this. What do you have planned for the future? Yeah, I know. Loaded question. What is your five-year outlook here? Where do you see yourself? Where do you see the business? What's going on in your life?
Well, my daughter just got married this past weekend, so nice. So I see. Hopefully in 5 years there'll be more than one grandchild in the family that I'll be spending time with. I would like to say that my business would have several people either directly working in the business or participating in the business in a more structured way than the partnerships I have now. And I hope that 5 years from now will be my 45th college reunion, and I expect instead of riding my bike to my reunion only from Chicago to South Bend, that I'll ride my bike to my reunion from Milwaukee to South Bend.
Cool. Nice. How many miles is that?
My ride from Chicago I rode from Northwestern to South Bend, and that was 131 miles. Jeez. And so from Milwaukee, it'd probably right around, from a biking perspective, probably right around 200 miles would be my guess.
Jeez. You're a machine, man. You're a machine. I love it. Cool. And again, for the audience, all the information will be in the show notes and provided to you guys after this interview. So once again, Dave, I appreciate you. I thank you. And good luck for your 5-year plan, man. I'm going to hold you accountable.
All right, Jake. Thanks a lot. It was very enjoyable talking to you, and I look forward to November 8th when the book comes out.
Awesome. Thanks again to David Wallace for coming on the show and speaking the wisdom of sales. I know I need to do a better job. Hopefully you don't. Hopefully as a small business owner, you're rocking the socks off of your sales, but there are some areas you need to tighten up. You got to make sure that you use some of Dave's wisdom in those areas, and hopefully he provided that great info for you. And if you want to get in contact with Dave on a deeper level, head on over to our app. It's free. You can get to know David Wallace a little bit better, to see what he's about. Again, our app is free. It's on both Android and Apple platform. Go to your app store and type in Brilliant Biz, B-I-Z, book with all 3 capital B's. And if this show gave you value, if it inspired you, if it allowed you to think a little bit differently in your own personal business, please, we'd greatly appreciate if you click that subscribe button and, of course, left a review. The more subscribers, the more reviews, it allows us to make sure that the small business community can get the right information from brilliant practicing experts that are actually doing great work in their businesses today to help you, the small business owner, thrive in 2017. And of course, if you want to get your hands on those 100 tips to make sure that you succeed this year, head on over to our bit.ly link. It's bit.ly/brilliant biz book, all capital B's, and there you can get a hold of those 100 tips and go out there in the world and be a great small business owner. You're doing great work, even though at moments it's hard. Keep on doing it. We applaud you. We appreciate you. And we will see you next time on the Brilliant Breakthroughs podcast. Until then, do something brilliant. We'll see ya.